everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome to my channel. My name is Hafeezat. I'm a current events and lifestyle blogger, vlogger, YouTuber, Instagrammer, social media manager. And today I am with my friends and we are just gonna be talking about the year in review, the Black edition. And we're just gonna talk about some of the questions that I have and just chat about how this past year has been in multiple ways and just ways to continue to promote Black joy, Black happiness, unity, all the good stuff that we need in this world right now. So without further ado, I'm just gonna call on people to just introduce themselves and we'll get started. So Maryam, you are right next to me, so you're going first.
My name is Maryam. I am 19, about to turn 20 in a few weeks, and I'm a journalism student and a poet at Temple.
Awesome. Tianna.
Hi, I'm Tianna. I use she or her pronouns, and I have a YouTube channel where I talk about books that are currently behind me and movies, TV shows, and I'm currently exploring Broadway videos. I'm a history major at Temple University. I study history, and I'm currently applying for my master's program to study education. So that's all about me.
Period. All right, Ade.
Hello everybody, my name is Ade. I'm a Nigerian-American visual artist from Maryland, and I'm a graphic design major at Temple. What else about me? I love music, I love anime. I do a lot of different art, creative things on the side too.
Awesome. Sasha?
I'm Sasha. I'm 18. I'm doubling in political science and African American studies at Temple University, and then I also am an independent writer and organizer on the side. And I make TikToks, but that's not my fault. That happened on accident. And I'm from Texas. That's sort of my whole thing.
We love Texas. And Sophie.
Hi, I'm Sophie. I'm currently on a gap semester because I'm doing photography full time. I'm a photographer, a model, a YouTuber, a cat mom. Actually, my cat's like right here. He's with me today. Yeah. So yeah, and I'm also a social activist. So I like to talk about politics and social issues on my Instagram. So yeah.
Awesome. And if y'all already didn't know, my name is Hafeezat. I am a communication and social influence major at Temple. These are all my Temple peeps. I am 20, gonna be 21 in 3 months. Wow. And I am also a major advocate of social issues of all types. Okay, so first question, how are you? How are you doing?
Girl.
Let's get into it.
I don't know.
All I can say, the only thing I know for sure about like my emotional state right now is I want a Black History Month do-over.
Yep.
That's all I need.
About that.
I was like, we should do it over in either June or August, somewhere during the warm months, and especially June because Juneteenth. So I was just like,
yeah, I actually have like big plans. Hopefully they like pull through for June. I'm supposed to be interviewing an author for her upcoming book that discusses about racism and systematic racism in the school system. So during that month of June, hopefully we can like push for a whole national scale of Black joy, because I've seen like people promote lots of movies and TV shows that have Black trauma within said movies and TV shows. And when I comment, hey, X, Y, and Z book / movie / TV show has Black trauma or just trauma in general, maybe you should reevaluate why this is in your post. And then I get backlash for, oh, like you're doing too much. It's fine. Like as long as with the trigger warnings, have the trigger warnings all you like. But if you're saying this is Black joy and you're going into it with the ideal in mind of Black joy, you're going to be disappointed when you have the traumatic scenes in XYZ.
yeah, I feel that. And I think that's just like, because I don't know, like y'all kind of explained it without even explaining it, but I feel the same way y'all are feeling. I just can't, like, there's too many words to describe how I'm feeling and also not enough, if that makes sense. I'm literally not trying to sound profound. I'm like so serious. But I think that encapsulates it. I remember like first day Black History Month, we saw that thread about like 28 movies to watch that are Black joy or have no Black trauma. And I saw so many movies with trauma. I was like, who curated this list?
There was a TV show that I talked about on my channel, Lovecraft Country. I'm just gonna say it. And when I found out the book was written by a white man who loves using the N-word in said book, I was like, oh,
Wait, really?
I put myself in a corner where I was like, oh, honey, we can't talk about this book or TV show ever again. Why can't we just have Black characters who are magic just because? Like, why can't we just have the chosen one because he's the chosen one? He's the chosen one because his mama or his ancestor was sexually assaulted by a white man.
I've never seen Lovecraft Country before.
I haven't watched it yet.
Me neither.
Wait, so am I getting, should I not watch it? Like,
If you're into horror and if you're into seeing Black people on the screen, of course, go watch it. I just couldn't, in good conscience, continue to watch it because of the context that I have of the show, of the book, and knowing that the author still profits off of said book and the movie and the TV show. I'm like, oh,
I did know that. I knew that the original was written by a full white man.
Dropping the N-word in
He
2016.
used the N-word profusely. I did know that. I just never watched the show, but I had read that.
You can watch my video. I talk about the show if you like want to like have like a precursor to like fully diving into it. But
can you put that in the comments? Can you just comment your link real quick?
Yeah.
I love horror movies. I still have not watched, and I love Jordan Peele, but I still have not watched Lovecraft Country for those reasons. Also, like, I feel like partially it's because any Black-centric media that, like, when all of my white friends are recommending art about Black people to me, it's immediately suspect. Because it's like, okay, like if none of my Black friends are backing you up on this, and it's just all these white people, like, you gotta watch this, I'm gonna wonder why a little bit. But I also feel like in terms of what we're talking about between like people centering trauma in discussions around Black film, I feel like the other side of that is what the standards for good art, not just film, but art in general, are so implicitly connected to whiteness that it sometimes feels to me like movies about Black people or white people, when they consider movies about Black people that they like, are more drawn to movies about Black trauma, not just because of like the voyeuristic sort of instinct that I think a lot of white people have, but because they think that media that is absent of those white influences and also doesn't have something like inherently serious about it is just not going to be as good. Like after Hafeezat and another girl in our hall and I watched The Photograph a couple of weeks back, and I was looking into comments about it after, and so many white people, without even really being able to give a substantive criticism, just saying like, oh, this is a subpar rom-com. Why? Like the only thing that's missing when you consider The Photograph to a rom-com about a white couple is white people. Like all of the cinematic aspects are there, the writing is there, the acting is there, the chemistry is there. It's just because it's a Black-centric story, white people are always going to consider it as lesser, and also because it's targeted at white people, at Black people. The Photograph does not feel like a movie that was written for white enjoyment necessarily, and I think white people feel that and just interpret it as it being worse.
Yeah, but then you see like everybody like rallying for Queen and Slim when it came out, and I was just kind of traumatized.
Hafeezat.
What's up?
I hate what that movie did because I heard. So Lena Waithe had an interview where she was talking about the ending. I'm assuming that we all watched it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so she's talking about the ending, right? And like why she chose to kill them off, and she was like, well, I just think it'd be, kind of disrespectful for those who, for those who have died at the hands of police, because then they could see that and be like, well, why do they get to escape, but then we don't? I'm like, what the hell are you talking about?
We want to escape.
Like, what do you mean? Like, that's the whole point, is to give us a hope that we can still get past these situations. But instead, you want to go and have the people who have the dude who sells them out be a freaking Fred Hampton like person. Like, what are we doing here?
It was very unfortunate. I cried. I definitely cried, I think, at least once. Also, some scenes were unnecessary. I think y'all know what I'm talking about when I say
crazy monkey car sex.
That, okay, I don't.
before I get to the next question, I was gonna continue what Sasha was saying and how non-BIPOC people and POC people don't like our movies that are meant for us because it doesn't have trauma. And that's the same within the book community. People will only read The Hate You Give, White Fragility, and Why the Black Kids Sit Together at the Lunch Table. It's always books like that that hinge on our experience and not our happiness and our joy. And it's so frustrating because you're just like, there are more Black authors out there that write about books for us. And we don't have to read stories that talk about trauma, and we don't have to have, I'm going in a circle, but I think you understand what I'm saying. We don't need to have trauma for the movie to be good. We need joy because we need an escape or a reality of seeing smiling faces of Black people.
The other thing that's interesting to me about that part of film that I honestly want to write an essay about this, but like, so there are so many like classic white-centric American movies, like Napoleon Dynamite is an amazing example, where passion projects, like they were started by people who had no money, who just wanted to make a movie, and they made a movie with everything that they could, and like it just happened to blow up. But people don't consider the fact that, you know, who's making movies like that but about Black people is Africans, specifically Nigerians, like making Nollywood movies that they're pressing on DVDs and like selling and putting on YouTube, and they have these massive cult following, and it's the same thing. Like when you see the directors of Napoleon Dynamite like filming in their old high school with like random people from their hometown, like all of that is, there's a whole like even bigger like culture of Black people in Africa making those movies, and they're just not regarded in the same way, even though like they, not only are they known so well, like not even just among Black people, but like so many of like the Twitter reaction pictures and videos that you see are just from Nollywood movies. Like they have massive cultural influence, and they're just not regarded in the same way, even though it's the exact same thing.
Well, we hit the ground running. All I asked was, how are you doing? You know, that's all I asked, but it's good. I knew when I brought y'all together that this would be a good conversation and lots of good thoughts would come out of it. So I'm very excited to see how y'all react to the next couple questions. So we kind of touched upon it already, but overall, how has Black History Month been for you? And I'm just going to target this to people. So I guess for Maryam, because like you haven't said much just yet.
I feel some kind of way about how this month is supposed to be a celebration of our history and who we are as a people, and all we've experienced is trauma. Like not even just like we were talking about film, but I'm talking about the things that happened in Texas, the bad weather, what's happening to us financially. Like a lot of us have been going through it, like in the most like just aggravating way. And it's like we don't really get to air out our frustrations either. And it's just like, it's so like this month was supposed to be like uplifting and exciting, and I feel like we've touched on nothing like this month but like what's wrong. Like we haven't gotten to focus on like, hey, what's, like we were talking about the other conversation with the first question, like what's going good, like what's making us smile. Just so I would say like this month has been like, I mean, we have talked about some of the things that we've contributed to the community, a lot of the good things that have come out of Black culture, but a lot of it, even in that sense, is still rooted in like oppression, and it hurts to think about.
Yeah. So, Sophie, you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I do. I was just thinking about like my Black History Month personally, and something that like pissed me off kind of, and what pisses me off honestly every February is like white people's perception of Black History Month, but I guess I've become really aware of it this year because summer 2020, I was organizing a lot of protests, which prompted a lot of white interviewers that are like obsessed with like the whole Black movement to approach me and ask to interview me. Like I was interviewed by Elle magazine. And then recently, like during Black History Month, I was approached by an interviewer who wanted to ask me questions about like, I guess, young Black like social activists and like what we're doing this month. And I was like, well, I'm not really doing anything. Like the first question was like, well, what activist projects are you working on this February? I was like, nothing. It's a pandemic. Like I'm like I'm inside. And it's like, it just implies a kind of obsession with like our experience, which I think Tianna mentioned before, like rather than what we should be focusing on, which is like Black joy and like what makes Black people happy and what we want to do and what we want to achieve, rather than like, well, what activist thing are you doing right now? Like, how's the struggle for you? Like, that's kind of all that I see as white people's perception of February, is like not really about Black people, but like about how performative they can be when it comes to caring about us. Which is also why they only like approach me in February rather than like, nobody's talking to me about Black people in September, bro, or like August, but it's February where it's like, so what are you doing this month? It's like, bro, I'm Black every month. Like, what do you mean? What am I doing this month? So yeah, that I'm rambling, but that has just like pissed me off all February.
Yeah, and I think there's like that kind of implies some sort of like obligation also on Black bodies to continuously be speaking out about issues and whatnot. I've seen it a lot, especially this past year, which kind of goes into my, my next question about like how you would describe this past year for Black people. For me, it's been a lot of energy output to kind of reaffirm that, my humanity is my humanity to people who probably still don't recognize my humanity. But not only that, but I've been working like overtime. I don't know about the rest of y'all, but trying to actually like, not only establish myself in the spaces I want to establish myself in, but also working overtime to kind of educate others, which that's my personal obligation, that I put on myself, because I tell people all the time, I'm not required to educate you. I'm not required to do anything for you, and I think with those types of interviews, they kind of expect us to be 24/7, doing grassroots organizing, when in reality, I literally lay in my bed and watch YouTube videos all day. So I don't know what you're expecting from me. I don't eat, breathe, and sleep activism and advocacy. We are just ourselves as well. We're not just like machines for social change, so I don't know if anybody has anything to say about that, and also just like the past year.
I definitely hear what you're saying. I remember I was talking with some friends, I think a month after George Floyd died, God rest the soul, but we were kind of talking just about what to do next in terms of like, who we are as Black people, and like our approach to, because when you notice with ever since Trayvon, actually, like every year that there's been a Black person that's died at the hands of law enforcement or the hands of the higher up or the powers that be, there's always a certain kind of pattern that goes on there. I mean, I'm sure that y'all are self-aware enough to know, but it's like, the person dies, we get upset, white folks pretend to care, and then we spend like all this type of energy trying to like show them, like you said, our humanity matters, we matter, whatever. But I think after George Floyd died, I think there was a shift where it was like, we're not doing this again. Like, we're not, at least for me, like I'm not finna prove myself to nobody because they're not comfortable with me. Like, if I walk into an interview with my hair in a twist like it is right now, like that's just because that's what it is. Like, why am I going to suffer the consequences because you're not comfortable with me? I'm not a threat to you unless you're a threat to me. So I'm not going to compromise myself anymore because of like what you want me to be, if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm wording this right, but I think that's also the attitude with like a lot of Black youth today, is like, we are tired, and I applaud you, Hafeezat, as well, for like taking the initiative personally to educate people, because I think that it is needed to, a certain extent, like people, and not even just white folks, like people in general, like need to be more aware of what's going on socially. I just think that when you talk about the greater education in terms of like white people and like the white power structure, I don't think that's our problem anymore, nor was it ever. But I think that we took on a lot of that because there was so much of a need to, quite frankly, in my opinion. But also now, I mean, this is the first time that companies and corporations and just the white hierarchy in general are realizing that if they don't get with the times, that they're not going to survive. Like, both of my parents work corporate jobs, right? So my dad and mom are always on calls, and like I always hear them talking about, trying to convince people that like we matter and stuff like that. But there's been a lot less of that grace given to those people now. I think like my parents now are like, you know, F it. Like if you don't see why diversity and inclusion in your company is valuable, then like, you know, what we doing? And I can assume that when I can assume correctly, I hope that when all of us enter the workforce, that that same energy is kept. Like what we doing here? Like we not gonna, you know, go Kanye for you. You know what I'm saying? Like we're gonna come here the way that we are because we're tired of trying to prove to you that we matter. Like we just matter and just take it as it is. And like I doubt that a company or just a power structure in general is gonna like overturn an entire pool of people and their talents because of what their biases are. Which if they are, then hey, more power to your white male fragility. But I'm just saying for those that want to survive, you know, they're definitely gonna have to adapt to the times.
Tianna.
Yes. So you actually brought up a lot of points. The first point that I would like to make is there's a reason why you will never see social activist in my bio whatsoever, because it then becomes, oh, you can educate me, or oh, I can reach out to you when I feel guilt about the microaggression that someone did or they didn't do or whatnot. And it's also like, it's the bare fucking minimum. Uplifting voices, sharing graphics, correcting what needs to be corrected, the bare freaking minimum of what they presume of social activism, to be honest. And then, oh my God, I'm losing my train of thought. It's also like in the workforce of, oh, well, you know those things as Black people. I'm just like, no, I don't. Explain. Please proceed with your microaggression of why you think I, as a Black person and as an Indigenous woman, know about what you think I know. Please elaborate. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. But yeah, I'm losing my train of thought, but I'll pass off to someone else.
You're fine.
No, all of that is so real. I mean, part of like starting college this past year for me has been unlearning the role that I took on in my high school environment, because like y'all are gonna hate hearing me say this, but unfortunately it's the truth. I was the only Black student in my class in high school. There were 2 others in the whole school. And I was also like student council president. And of course we didn't have like a diversity and inclusion person. So every single time there was like a racist incident, which was a lot, white kids would come to me like I was an administrator. And it's just like, this is not my job. Like I cannot shoulder all of the collective trauma of people of color at the school because like you're afraid to go to the person whose job it is for some reason. There's that aspect of it. But to like circle back to Hafeezat's initial question, a big part of like, I've been feeling guilt from this because like I have been in such a position for so long as like an activist where people felt like they could use me as a resource, and I felt like I constantly had to be performing like organizing to be seen as like
legitimate,
worthy of holding the space that I do and the platform that I have, which is a lot of guilt that I've been trying to unlearn with that. But what I've been doing, focusing that energy on recently, has been unlearning generational trauma within my own family and trying to like understand my Black experience as a product of so many other Black experiences. Because like when I think about like myself as a grown, not fully grown, but like grown person, like who's gonna hypothetically continue being a grown person for the rest of my life, like whatever sort of person I choose to be is going to have an impact on whatever Black children are in my life in the future. And I feel like I want to put a conscious effort that hasn't really been made in my family as of yet to like unlearn all of the stuff that we've been through and the ways that it creates like harmful cycles. Which is not to say that like the adults in my family have been trying their best and like aren't aware of that at all, because I know they are. But there's just so much, and there's so much we don't know. Like we can't even imagine like the full extent of what we're shouldering sometimes. And I think that's been a really helpful exercise to me, is not only like unlearning my position as someone who has to be a resource for white people, but also like putting conscious effort into like breaking oppressive cycles that were like given to my family by colonization. And I think it's hard work, but I think it's really important.
Awesome. Maryam, I know you wanted to say something.
Going off of what Ade said about reaffirming our identities, I think also what Sasha just said about like being a resource for white people. One thing that I think is very interesting is, on top of all the crap that Black people have went through, not just this year, but in general through all the years, we constantly have to like we were saying, reaffirm our identity and reaffirm our humanity. On top of that, though, be expected to carry everyone else's movements. And that is one thing that I cannot stand. Yes, of course, I want to see everyone do well, no matter what's your race, class, whatever. But here's the thing, Black movements are the blueprint for everyone else's damn movements.
Period.
On top of that, people, and it's funny because ever since George Floyd and Breonna Taylor have died, people think this Black Lives Matter thing is new. Like, Black Lives Matter started when Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown got killed years ago. But because of white guilt and guilt from non-Black people, and now that these movements are getting a lot of traction, they're like, oh, well, you need to support this the way you support Black Lives Matter. I'm like, you know how long it took us to get here? And also, like, of course, I've noticed a lot of other movements, it's like they're using anti-Blackness to fuel, why doesn't this get attention? But Black people have always championed everyone's movements.
Yeah, and that's the kicker, you know, like I spoke about it in my last video. Go watch my last video if you haven't watched it. Hey, what's up? But I literally said it, like, you know, with like the most recent like situation with like, you know, the AAPI hate that's happening, which is absolutely devastating.
Terrible.
I've seen a lot of people talk like in turn saying, you know, well, y'all need to support us like you support BLM. But the thing is, BLM is a product of 400 plus years of organizing and advocacy from Black bodies within this country. So you can't really, like, one, like, again, like you said, we're the blueprint. A lot of organizing tactics come from Black organizers, especially Black women and LGBTQ organizers, you know, so that's the first thing. And I think that needs to be acknowledged when you try to create your own things. Not only that, but then once you start, you know, doing like the comparison and kind of bringing in BLM and Black people, you immediately put the onus on us, and as if it's our fault that we're detracting from your issues when that's not our goal, or that's not even what we're like searching to do anyway. So,
and this is history repeating itself too. Like, this happened, exact same thing happened after the Civil Rights Movement. Like, immediately after the Civil Rights Movement, you saw similarly named Black supported movements for specifically Indigenous people and Eastern Asian people come to mind, but obviously also like the LGBTQ community at large. But that feels like so difficult to separate from movements for Black people because they were so overwhelmingly Black. So it's ridiculous. Like, obviously it's so different because the landscape of social media changes things a lot. But we've been here before. Black people are, and Black, like in America specifically, like Black organizers have been the backbone of like the Free Palestine movement in America, of the LGBTQ movement in America, of like the disability rights and the fight for the ADA. Like, none of those things could have been done without Black organizers. And it's because like there's no pressure generally in the definition of what being an activist is in the era of social media. There's no expectation to learn that history. There's no expectation to like draw from what's happened in the past and to like look back and say, oh, Black people have been organizing for this for longer than I've been alive. No one is going and like, it would be such a quick Google to see all the history of all these movements. And there's no expectation to do that because social media activism is so performative. Like, I blocked So You Want to Talk About on Instagram a couple of weeks ago just because it's so, that whole like the Canva infographic industrial complex.
Don't call me out like that.
It's not you, because that's the thing, is you're a person.
Girl.
You're a person making content attached to your face. It's very different when you're like an anonymous, probably like when you're an anonymous person. I'm not going to make any assertions. Like making monetized content, like that actual organizers are constantly saying, this is not right. This is not a representation of what we're fighting for. This is not a good representation of the situation. And it doesn't encourage people to do the research that like the Black Panthers would have been doing, for instance. And that is a point of frustration for me.
Tianna, I know you wanted to say something, and you are the last word before we continue.
Okay, so a lot of points. First point I'd like to make. I think we need to relearn history repeating itself. I think people repeat history because what is history? It's a social movement, ecological movement of resources, people, ideas repeating itself, because we cannot unlearn what's happened in the past because people refuse to go back and look at a history book. And then also, I completely understand where Sasha's coming from, of living in a very white suburbia area and being that only Black person. I was the only Black person in my entire county that played 2 white sports. And my coaches refuses to give me my accolades. I broke a school record. I broke a conference record. I broke a state record. And I was not nominated to an NT thing. It was very frustrating. And when I'm like 3 years past graduation date, but when George Floyd was murdered, I was constantly getting texts of people whose numbers I had blocked and deleted. So I was confused as to why my phone was blowing up for no goddamn reason. And one of the gals that responded to my Instagram video was like, when you say we shouldn't just rely on prayer, I think you're wrong. We should do more than this, that, and the third. And I was like, look at you telling me how a Black person should feel about watching my country terrorize me consistently and constantly without fail. And then I told her about herself. I was like, watch yourself before you wreck yourself, because you have called me the N-word. I know what school you go to. I know where you work. Try me, sis.
Period.
Like, I was so sick of it. And I'm sick of people thinking that they can hit me up when we haven't talked in 3+ years. When I graduated, if I had your number, we talked, we were cool. But it's business that I've never seen, heard of, suddenly have my number, like, oh, can I talk to you? How should I react? Google is free. I do not have social activists in my bio. That does not mean you get to skirt my DMs or skirt in my personal messages and ask me what's good, what's popping, sis. It's not cute. It's not a good look. Like, seek help, genuinely.
Tell me why, like, and they meant well, but I also dealt with people from like my high school coming to apologize. And it's just like, it took, like, I understand ignorance, but I also don't understand ignorance, because, these incidents happened around 2015, 2016, 2017 that they were apologizing about. And like at that time, there was more and more knowledge coming out every single day, and like this one girl, and again, like, she meant well, obviously, but like, she DM'd me and she's like, I'm so sorry that when you were talking about Black girl magic and everything, I said, what about all women and all those things? And I was just like, you're good. I didn't even remember that instance. Like, it's fine. But I was just like, they're DMing me now because of what's happening, currently, because this was this past summer. And I was just like, okay. But anyways, so we're going to get into more positive stuff now. So you are all in some sort of creative space, whether it's TikTok or like YouTube, whatever the case may be. What creative work by a Black person or a Black group have you seen recently that you really enjoyed? Or what is something you've done recently that you would like to share? So I'll go first. I think something that was pretty recent that I really enjoyed was seeing Bobby Shmurda get out of jail.
I didn't know who he was until 2 days ago.
It's okay.
Bro, all of New York celebrated. I'm from New York City. That was a holiday for us, bro. That was a holiday. Like, Bobby getting out. Oh my God.
So seeing that has been really fun because not only have I seen that, I've seen all the reporting about it. So there's this one photographer that I've follow. Her name is Flo Ngala, and she is a masterful photographer, and she has been like the sole photographer taking like photos of him and his like recent outings and everything like that, the people that he's seeing. And it's just been nice to kind of see that and have people kind of collectively come together about like this thing, because we've been rallying for him for the past 6 years. So now that it's finally happened, it's great, and also he'd be wearing his mask, yeah, he's at the club, but he's the only rapper with his mask at the club.
At
so
his trials, I was looking at his like and stuff, and I was like, if he had gone to trial, half of that shit would have been tossed out. And I was like, why did he take the, like, I get it, no one's a snitch, but I was like, legally, he would have like had the minimum sentence of like 2 to 3 years. So I was like, damn.
The carceral system does not serve us in any way, shape, or form. So like, but that's a whole other thing. But anyways, back to my question, what is something creative that you've seen done by a Black person and or group, or what is something that you've done recently that you would like to share? So Sasha, I'll let you go first and I'll just call afterwards.
My recent thing is my favorite author right now, because I'm a big sci-fi and fantasy nerd. My favorite author right now is Nnedi Okorafor. She's amazing. She writes incredible, like Black women-centric sci-fi and fantasy. Could not literally read any of her books. They're all amazing. This was not created as recently, but I rediscovered it recently. So in 2004, MF Doom released this really, really cool album called Venomous Villain with this different persona called Victor Vaughn. And I just got my Doom tattoo a couple weeks ago. And it just came out on Spotify. And I have it on vinyl back home, but I hadn't been able to listen to it because it wasn't on Spotify, and I've just been listening to it on repeat. It's so different from all this other stuff. It's like the production is like sort of heavy and weird and like very cool, but it's so much more clear storytelling. Like in most of his other stuff, like it's so much relying on rhyme scheme and like the listener piecing it together, which is still there, but there are so many songs on Venomous Villain where he's just telling you a story. And it's so nice. And having just lost him, it's so nice. Yeah. Highly recommend.
Awesome. Sophie?
Things that I've done, damn. I mean, does getting my new studio count? Like,
yes, it does.
That's like just like the one thing that I've just been extremely excited about, because I'm a photographer and that's like basically what I'm going to be doing full time for the next 7 months. So I recently got my first studio. So that was like a really big accomplishment for me. So yeah, I was really proud of myself for that. And then someone whose work I've really been looking up to, probably Quill Lemons. Yes. I don't know if you guys know him. Yeah, he's a really awesome photographer. I follow him on Twitter, and then I recently followed him on Instagram after his shoot with Billie Eilish. So yeah, I've really just been looking up to him. And from following him, I've been introduced to like more Black art. So that's been really cool.
Maryam?
So I have 2 things. Number 1, I wrote a poetry book and I recently published it. It's called Bantu Knots and Butterflies. And it's about my growth as coming into being a young Black woman, also having to do with like coming out of my shell and being more vulnerable. Thank you. But number 2, No Name. One of my heroes, my good sis No Name, released a song called Rainforest. And I was like, this is exactly what we need. She was like, how you defending billionaires when you broke on the bus? And I said to myself, that is exactly what we need to be hearing. That anti-capitalist, anti-white supremacy, pan-African, that's the kind of headspace I need to be in. Like No Name very much reminds me of like what we could be in terms of like, not just Black joy, but just Black liberation as a whole. And I respect her so much. I just love seeing her journey and like what she's doing for hip hop and music in general.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing, Sasha. I'm manifesting that for you, Sophie, to photograph No Name. I want to
Bro,
photograph Jackie Aina so badly.
if I
That's
get the
my
opportunity. Oh, I know you love Jackie Aina.
that's my sister.
I know you. I
I
follow
love
you on Twitter, bro. I know you love Jackie Aina.
So her and like a bunch of other Black women, you know, so manifesting that for all of us. If we want to talk about Black music real quick, Chloe and Halle just released their Chrome edition. So if you haven't streamed that, please stream that because Hazy is, it's beautiful. It's such a beautiful song. I love it. But I'm not getting into that. Ade?
Honestly, I've been going back and listening to a lot of like music that I grew up on. Like growing up, my dad and mom raised me on like everything, but also like the classics. Like my dad's car was like full of like Nas, Tribe Called Quest, Mary J. Blige, Jill Scott, like D'Angelo, like bro, like all those like classic people. And my dad and I talk about this all the time. It's like I feel like what, and I'm not trying to sound like oh man, back in my day, but it's some it's some truth to it. Like I feel like because there was less money in the industry back then, music was more for the discovery than it was for the profit. Like the reason why artists like D'Angelo, Erica, Jill Scott, like the reason why they have such longevity is because they were constantly trying to discover new sounds. They weren't chasing trends. And also too, there was just something about their music that like healed the soul, if that makes sense. Like
Organic.
yeah, organic, exactly. Like my dad and I talk about it all the time. It's like even artists that are still releasing now, and even newer artists like Masego is one of my favorite artists out right now. Well, sorry, Masego is actually how you say it, but
Really?
yeah, it's South African.
I've been
Really?
pronouncing
Oh. Terrible. I love him.
Yeah, his Jimmy Kimmel performance was outstanding. But anyway, I digress. But there was just a lot of music out right now. And then even the Judas, even the Judas soundtrack, like music honestly if I didn't have music right now and like God, I'd probably be crazy. But like music has been such a huge like release for me because music also fuels a lot of my creativity. Like a lot of my shoots, whatever, are named after songs that I was listening to at those moments. So, and then also going back to the whole like healing of the soul type of thing. I just think having that music and having that stuff in my life right now has definitely been something to look forward to. And also, Tiny Desk has been killing their Black History Month recently. They've been killing their whole. They've been killing JP Mafia. I need to get into them. I've listened to them yet. Desmond Curry just dropped yesterday. I gotta listen to that one too.
So good.
But yeah, man, music. Just
We could like regroup another time and talk about Black music. I think that'd be
please,
really
please.
fun. Tianna.
Okay, so as cliche as I am, I recently just read Legend Born by Tracy Dion, and it won the Coretta Scott King Award for literary fiction. And it follows our gal going through grief. But we also like usually Black romantic, it never talks about the Black experience ever in literature from what I've read. And this book I think really respected and did it well. And it was for my book club this month. And then another author is Evan Winter. And I've never read a Black fantasy novel inspired by Black folklore that didn't involve like whiteness in it. So I think he did this really well. So those are the two Black creators that I've been enjoying recently. And then every book reviewer that has made me feel welcome and that has like responded to a text of mine is people that I will always love and respect and admire within my community.
Yeah, I love that. And everybody that, all of your stuff is going to be down in the description box. So you can go check out their channels, their TikToks, their podcasts, their books, support. We'll have all the ways that you can, send us some money if you want to. It's the last day of Black History Month. Venmo us, help us out. We are broke college students. So I guess this kind of like ties into it a little bit, but I think besides just like creative work, what is some sort of like Black joy that I think that you've just come across recently? I know that for me, Victoria Monet just recently had her child. And I think that is like the purest form of joy because I love babies. I love babies. My TikTok is comprised of babies, dogs, art, and food. That's all. That's who Hafeezat is. So that's some sort of like Black joy I've seen recently. So anybody can jump in.
Honestly, a lot of it has just been with my family, which sounds corny and sounds cheesy, but like
No, stop. You've been doing this entire time. Don't diminish your words, bro. Don't be like, oh, does that make sense? Or what? Because I do it too. And then I look back at it and I'm just like, it makes sense.
Everything that you're saying, like
exactly.
it makes sense.
It makes sense.
You got it.
All right, bet. So, I love my family so much. Like I've been at home. I mean, of course, like as I should, right? Like of course, you know, we have our moments where like my brother gets on my nerves, my mom gets on my nerves. Like we're living together all the time. But I think those drastically don't compare to the joyous moments that we've had. And considering how my dad grew up and how my mom grew up and their whole family situations, and especially my dad, like it's a lot of stuff on that side. But just seeing how much we've like grown during the pandemic, like closer, it's like it's been super dope to see, especially me and my brother, because he's 5 years younger than me, and for a long time we didn't really see like eye to eye because of that age range. Not saying that we were like fighting every day or anything like that, but like he wasn't like my homeboy until the pandemic happened, and then we like started watching what was that one show? We watched Attack on Titan together. We watched like
I don't like it. It's too graphic for me.
And then there's also this artist. He's a rapper. His name is Toby Wigwe. Do y'all know him?
Yes.
Okay.
Nigerian.
Is that like Toby?
Yeah, he's Nigerian. Huh?
Yeah. Toby Lou?
No. His last name is Wigwe.
Oh, the one with the wife whose blonde hair is blonde.
Yeah,
that one. Okay, because there's Toby Lou, and then there's they're both Nigerian. So I was like,
yeah. But his whole thing is like Black family. It's like Black family. Like in his songs, he talks about his wife, his kids, like everything surrounding Black family and all that. And it's just cool seeing like, and it sounds weird, but like seeing that be, well, never mind. I'm not gonna say it again. It's just cool seeing that being like a thing, because I feel like for a long time, Black men especially were never, and even today, like we're not really allowed to like have feelings. And seeing how much he like cares for his family, and like how much he talks about like that's what, and then even my dad growing up, like he always taught me that like, you know, anybody can, you know, kill somebody or sell drugs or whatever, but like you got to take care of your family. Like that's what makes you a man, because like you're not, because at that point you're not living for yourself anymore. You're living for the benefit of somebody else that you like brought into the world. Like that's what makes you a man. And I feel like a lot of the times we look at like, you know, rappers or actors or whatever, and we think that like that's what they're supposed to be doing, like, you know, knocking down a bunch of girls and like wearing chains or whatever. But honestly, it's just family, man. And I think that that's been giving me a lot of joy, is like seeing that part of family like being put out there.
Anybody else?
I mean, there's not much to say about this, but I sort of just got promoted at my like writing, the group I write for. They were like, we really like you and we'd like you to write for us more, and also we're going to pay you more to do it. And I was like, yes. And I have an article coming out in a few days about my grandpa, that I'm really, really excited about for Black History Month. They were like, we want you to do a personal piece. And I was like, bet. And it's like the most, it's honestly, like, because my whole deal is like I'm a big history buff, like super big history buff. Like I write about the Black Panthers, like I write about Pan-Africanism. I don't really do personal stuff. So it was very difficult and vulnerable to write, but they really liked it, and I'm really excited for people to read it. And it's difficult, like very like I feel like I like climb the mountain kind of Black joy, but I'm still excited.
Awesome.
I think it's really cool.
You'll have to definitely share that with us once it's out. I'm so excited to read it. Anyone else?
So for me, it's like something that I'm like currently manifesting for myself. I was just told by my agent that I'm on hold for like a company that I've always wanted to model for since I was like really, really, really little. So it's like, it feels weird that it might be happening. So that was like a really joyous moment for me this past week. So yeah.
Exciting. Oh my God. Y'all gonna see my girl on billboards in like 2 years. I'm excited for you.
Maybe.
I'm excited for you. You know, whether it's like model status or like YouTube Black class of 2023, like, you know, it's gonna be great. You know, I'm so excited. All right, so we are at our second to last question. So we've just talked about, you know, a lot of different things. We've talked about the past year and how that's been on us. We've also just talked about more recent events, a bit more happy type things. I know that for Black people, we are very, very I think we keep on hope a lot more than we probably should, considering how this world has, like, you know, harmed us and treated us. But what is something that you would like to see in the future for Black people, you know, both short term and long term? I know in terms of short term, I really want these Black restaurants especially to continue keeping up. I know that the pandemic has hit them especially hard. Restaurants have been closing left and right. So I'm hoping that, you know, Black businesses, especially just in general, continue on and hopefully get the funding or the traction that they need in order to continue doing what they're doing and servicing the communities that they service. But like long term, I'm hoping that I won't have to worry if this country or this world is safe enough for me to have like little Black babies in and to just like survive in. I've been thinking about that a lot more recently. As I get older and as I'm like nearing graduation and applying to jobs, like where am I gonna move? Where am I gonna live? Is this space like, you know, integrated enough? Is there enough people that I can see of myself? And if something should happen, I have some sort of sounding board or community to back me up. And I'm only 20 and I hate having those thoughts because I'm only 20. Like I'm not having kids anytime soon. But it's always on my mind. So hopefully long term that changes and there's some sort of shift. But you know, all we can do is hope and do our best to push it forward. So yeah, I'm gonna call. So yeah, Tianna, you can go.
So I've tweeted this out once before, and I was just like, imagine the power of Gen Z BIPOC and POC therapists. Like, think about it for a second. I had one Black therapist, and nope. Chief called, it wasn't it. And I cannot wait for people our age now, and when they get their certificate, like their intersectionality and when their experience and what they know and what they're are going to be able to apply to their practice. I cannot wait for that to happen because, again, generational trauma and just the Black experience of that traumatic experience being in itself and having, again, our country terrorize us and seeing it face to face, experiencing it. I can't wait for that day. Like, I will never have children. I love and respect my body too goddamn much to ruin it for kids. My nipples are pierced. They're not getting on these boobies ever in their life, okay? No. They're staying in. I don't, I already have arthritis. Imagine the hip pain. No.
You're terrible.
I sure am. I'm a Capricorn, sweetheart. Isn't that nature?
I know.
So one phrase that I keep near and dear to my heart is that if you keep hope alive, it'll keep you alive. And hope is like a little flame. If you give it a space to breathe, it'll grow and be a phenomenal bonfire. And if you dwindle it down, it won't be able to grow and be fierce and powerful. So I just hope that we keep that hope alive.
Awesome. Maryam?
I just think in the near future, and this is also long term, I hope to see more Black people unite in terms of like just rejecting the labels and the different kinds of categories the white establishment has pushed us into. I don't think we need to, and it's crazy because like whiteness has defined us in so many ways. I was talking to my boyfriend about this the other day, like things having to do with slavery, colonialism, capitalism. I just think those things play such huge roles in our lives. And it's like, when do we get to exist without having all of those things constantly pushed down our throats? Like, I just want a space that's more geared towards just like defining ourselves without having anyone else define us. I just want to start rejecting things that were like placed on me to oppress me. And in general, just like, I just think it's also like, that also helps you get in the mental space of healing, because like all of the things that were put on us, clearly they weren't here to make us feel good or to uplift us as a whole. I just want to start rejecting things having to do with certain background in terms of like even like gender norms, rejecting certain ways of lifestyle, rejecting how someone tells you to wear your hair, just like whatever the fuck you want to do, like we should be able to do it. As long as it's not hurting anyone, we should be able to live in our own bodies and exist in our own way. Like, it's not even that complicated. So
it really isn't. Sophie?
I think for my short term, I want to see more Black like freelancers get hired. Specifically, I'm talking about like in my field, photography. I actually recently just made a YouTube video. It's going up, I think, tomorrow on, I don't know if you guys saw this white male photographer, Huergan Teller.
Oh my God, Crimes Against Humanity.
Yeah, I made a video on that because that was like, what the fuck? Like, I know that there are millions of small photographers that are unknown, but it's like, what the hell?
I think somebody said that that's his whole like aesthetic. But I was just like, if that's true and like that's his whole aesthetic, that just proves that white mediocrity gets more accolades than like, Black excellence. And that shouldn't be allowed. They did my dude Leslie Odom Jr. dirty. I'm very disappointed.
Yeah, that entire shoot was just like, I went into it in the video. It was just appalling to like every single freelance photographer, like everywhere, like even the ones that like just got their camera last week. Like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? So yeah, that made me think I really, really want to see more Black freelancers get hired. And I just want to see like prestigious publications put more faith into photographers of color and just like creatives of color that don't have the same resources, and like use Instagram as a tool to get their work out, because we just don't have the same connections and the same resources as every white industry photographer out there. So that's what I really want to see this year. And then long term, I agree with what you were saying about how like I just want a like community in which I know that I can raise kids and feel safe, and that my Black children can feel safe. Because at this point right now, I've kind of given up on that, and I've already, heavily considered me not living in this country 10 years from now. And I've actually even like kind of accepted the fact that I probably won't be living in this country 10 years from now, just because I've kind of given up on this country, and I'm kind of tired of fighting for hope in this country. So that's definitely long term, because if we miraculously turn around and like start giving a fuck about Black people, but like for real though, and not just in February, and that's not an exaggeration, then maybe. But at this point, I don't know, bro.
No, I was just speaking to what Sophie was saying of how there need to be more freelancers in these creative spaces. I also noticed the tokenism of some Black people in those spaces that don't even want to spread and give those connections to other small creatives. And it's frankly quite annoying and disheartening, especially I'm not shading my community, but there are 3 of them in my community where I reach out to them, it's like, hey, how are you doing? Let's collab. Let's sit down and chat. Crickets, nothing. I'm like, wow. Is that how we're playing this? It's a community. You can't speak about a community when the community's reaching out to you and you don't want to listen to that part of the community.
Yeah.
That's what I think is highly disappointing.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who definitely want to keep on to the monopoly that they have when it comes to being the sole Black person in the space. And it's just like, it's not a competition. There's enough money out there for
It sure
everyone.
is not.
They print it every day. Like money doesn't exist. It's arbitrary. So like what's the competition? Like we're all in this together, High School Musical, period. Ade.
I think short term, I definitely want to see a shift in Black music. I think a lot of the popular Black music outright, and I say popular in very, very high emphasis, like what's being played on the radio, what's being advertised on Instagram, stuff like that. Not the stuff that like we kind of, listen to. Like, I just want Black music to maybe take a step back from talking about hoes every track, like just maybe not talking about shooting somebody every track. I don't know, but I just think I want more stuff that's like we said before in the talk, like just more uplifting, educating, soul feeding type of music. Like, I sound so old right now. But,
you don't stream Chloe.
It's just challenging toxic masculinity.
It really is.
True. I was only saying all because like my dad would always be like, see, back in my day we had it, and yeah, now I see what he was getting at. But yeah, I want, and not even just with hip hop, just like even when you think about like R&B, like why is Tory Lanez the head of R&B right now after he shot a Black woman? Like, what are we doing?
He's not the head of my R&B, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
No, not y'all. I'm talking about like in terms of like charts and like Apple Music and like
because
again, numbers,
it's
quote unquote.
It's misogyny and it's misogynoir.
Yeah, but that's my point. It's like why like we have so like why is Masego as small or sorry Masego like why is he as small as he is right now for how talented he is and for how
he plays so many instruments.
He plays every instrument.
It's because some people this community hold on to white man's ideologies that I'll never understand. They'll hold on to these ideologies. I'm just like, can you let go of your toxic masculinity and not use your dick size in this argument? And it will never like I'm not talking to you. I'm saying like within the community, I'm just like, look, check it before you wreck it.
That's my short term. I think long term, like we said before, I want a greater sense of Black identity to be rooted in our youth. I know for me growing up in predominantly white spaces, being the only Black in a lot of different spaces that I probably shouldn't have been, but just being in those spaces, I went to high school with a lot of identity issues that, thankfully I got through, but it's crazy how much we discourage unique interests that aren't even that unique now. Like, I can't tell the amount of times that I got made fun of for like watching Dragon Ball Z when I was in middle school, and now like every Black kid and their mom will watch Dragon. I'm like, but y'all were the same kids that was calling me a Oreo. Like,
I mean, but like growth.
Yes, growth. But still, like,
you can have growth with accountability.
Yeah. That's true. That's very true.
Yes, absolutely. But I say that to say, like, if I didn't have the parents that I had or the community that I had around me that encouraged those interests, I would have like just probably gone and subscribed to whatever stuff that the white society would have put on me at that time. And then I just finally kind of grew into myself as a result. But it's just so important, man. Like, especially for Black children, they need to know that there's nothing that's like off the table for them, and that goes for what they can pursue, what their interests are, how they talk, how they dress, like all this stuff that like even like Black people put so much like I remember the first time I wore skinny jeans, my dad looked at me like I was the Antichrist, like it was, but it's stuff like that. It's like why. I just don't like how uniqueness is so discouraged in the diaspora. And shoot, I mean, Hafeezat, how Nigerians are when like you don't want to become a doctor or a lawyer. Like
it's a stereotype, but it's so true. My dad is still pushing law school on me, even though I told him I don't want to go anymore. He's like, you can do it after your master's. And I was like, okay, we'll see. I don't.
There are Nigerians in my family that are on their 6th degree and can't find a job. But anyway.
Jesus.
Short term, what would I like to see for the Black community? I'm gonna acknowledge that this is the angry, vengeful part of me speaking right now. I'd like to see the Golden Globes go really badly. That's my short term. I'd like to see the Golden Globes and the Oscars and all of the other white supremacist, stupid, lame award shows go bad as hell this year. And I am very confident that they are not going to go well, and that makes my soul happy. Yeah. But in terms of a positive short term for the Black community, I'm praying on these stimulus checks. In terms of long terms, I would like for a space to be made for Black people to open their hearts to radical thought. Not necessarily just radical in terms of like anti-capitalist, anti-white supremacist, like yes, that, but also I'd like to see some work done to unlearn biases that we have within the Black community. I like homophobia and transphobia come to mind. Anti-Semitism comes to mind. Colorism especially comes to mind. I'd like to see us like creating spaces to have those conversations. And I'd like to see us helping each other do the work to learn, to supplement the knowledge we're not given. Like, I'd like to see those of us who've had the opportunities to look into critical race theory, to look into queer theory, to look into our history in a deeper way than our schools do, to be helping each other, like, examine the things that we're taught, because that's when we're going to be ready to really, like, achieve actual historical justice, I feel.
Period. I love that. Thank you all so much. Are there any final thoughts that anybody wants to say or share? You got to keep it under a minute because I don't want to keep y'all for too long. All right.
I was going to say that when we're talking about the Black experience, I think it's important to remember that we were chattel slavery for white folks. When we talk about other things of the immigrant experience, people came over here looking for a visa, for citizenship. We had to fight for basic things such as citizenship and to vote. So that's something I wanted to talk about today, and I obviously forgot, but I think that's like a little sidebar of the quote unquote Black experience of being a Black American, and then also like being an African American. I think those are also two separate entities within itself. So yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Oh yeah, going off of what Tianna just said, speaking of those things, I just want to see all these damn diaspora wars come to an end. I am tired of it. I just think I'm just like, listen, when a cop pulls you over, he's not going to ask if you eat jollof, if you eat fried chicken, or
you said that wrong, but I'm gonna let it slide.
I did? Yeah, but he's not going to ask, like, if your skin is dark, he's like, that's just the main point. Like, I just get tired of every single time I log on Twitter, I see Black Americans arguing with Black Africans and then arguing with West Indian people. Like, I'm tired of it. I really can't do this anymore. Like, if y'all don't learn how to get along, y'all gonna get slapped. Like, I'm tired of it.
I would just like to say, since we were talking about like our hopes, I would like to say I was manifesting not having to see people on my timeline defending R. Kelly, and I have not seen that in a long time. So there's a victory.
People were defending him?
Oh my God, tons.
Do you not know? Yes, bro.
So many people.
The aunties.
It's like people, it's not even like, yeah, like I still listen to R. Kelly. It's like people with like his face on their shirts with their whole chest, like R. Kelly did nothing wrong. And I haven't heard that in at least a year.
Period.
So.
All right. Well, if that's all, We're gonna close this out. Thank you everybody for joining me today and doing this, and thank you to everybody who's watched. Like I said, all of our links and everything that we be doing is going to be in the description box down below. Venmos, Cashapp, Apple Pay, etc. will be down below. It is the last day of Black History Month. The least you can do is send a little moolah. It's fine. It won't hurt you, I promise, you know. But feel free to follow us. Feel free to comment. Let us know how you felt about this video. Make sure they're nice, because if not, the YouTube algorithm will delete it. So if they don't, I will. So just keep that in mind. But with that, I will just say goodbye, and I'll see you very soon. Bye-bye.